In 2015, the world looked at Canada and saw a beacon. While the rest of the West was fracturing, Canada was the exception, a post-national state with a young, charismatic leader promising sunny ways. It was a country where the middle class was allegedly growing, where immigration was a consensus, and where the Canadian dream was a stable global gold standard. But fast forward less than a decade, and that dream has developed a terminal cough. Today, a single mother in Halifax is skipping meals to pay for a one-bedroom apartment. A software engineer in Toronto, the kind of talent every nation prays for, is packing his bags for Texas because his six-figure salary can't qualify him for a mortgage on a fixer-upper. 2 million Canadians, roughly the population of Slovenia, visited a food bank in a single month. Canada has pulled off a feat that shouldn't be possible. It has increased its population at the fastest rate in the G7, while simultaneously watching its individual standard of living fall off a cliff. We were told that more people meant more growth. Instead, we got a population trap. Tonight, we're going to solve a mystery. How did one of the richest, most resource-wealthy nations on Earth manage to make living within its borders impossible? This isn't just about expensive houses. It's about the quiet death of a miracle. Of course, to understand how Canada is breaking, we have to understand the specific mechanism being used to break it. The historical parallel, the ghost of 1970s stagflation. Now, to see where Canada is going, we have to look at where the world has been. In the 1960s, the Netherlands discovered massive natural gas reserves. Money flooded in. But instead of a golden age, it led to Dutch disease, where a boom in one sector killed the rest of the economy. Canada is currently suffering from its own version of this. But it's not gas, it's real estate. For decades, Canada's economy was a meritocracy. You studied, you worked, you built. But over the last 8 years, the human element of the economy has been swapped for a debt element. Since 2015, the message from the top has been one of radical expansion. Historically, Canada used a points system, a surgical, merit-based approach to immigration that was the envy of the world. It was a system that ensured every newcomer had a seat at the table and a roof over their head. It was the intellectual friend of global policy. But in 2022, the surgical approach was replaced by a sledgehammer. The government set targets that would see the population grow by over 1 million people a year, levels of growth usually reserved for developing nations in the middle of a post-war baby boom. But here is the contradiction. While the population surged, the Noodle Index, the cost of basic survival, didn't just rise, it exploded. The why quest, the architecture of the collapse. Why did they do it? Why would a government accelerate immigration when the rental trap was already closing? The official answer from the Ministry of Immigration was labor shortages. They argued that with an aging population, Canada needed more workers to pay for the retirees. In 1971, there were 7 workers for every senior. By 2036, that will be 2. It sounds logical, mate. On paper, it's a simple math problem, but in reality, it's a Ponzi scheme. If you bring in 1 million people to solve a labor shortage in construction, but you don't actually build the houses for those 1 million people to live in, you haven't solved a shortage. You've created a catastrophe. Let's look at the Noodle Index for Toronto. A 2-bedroom apartment that cost $2,400 in 2022 now demands $3,300. That is a 25% increase in a single year. To afford a basic home in Vancouver, a family needs an income of $360,000. For context, the median family income in Canada is $70,000. The math is no longer mathing. We are seeing the rise of a 2-tier society. On one side, the asset class, existing homeowners who have seen their net worth skyrocket simply by sitting on a couch. On the other side, the generation of renters, who are essentially paying half their income to subsidize the retirement of the person living upstairs. And this is where the dark side of Canada's economy reveals itself. It's not just that houses are expensive, it's that the government has become addicted to the real estate drug. Real estate now accounts for a staggering portion of Canada's GDP, higher than in the US. Before the 2008 crash, Canada isn't a country with an economy, it's a housing market with a flag. The monopoly problem and the carbon cost. But wait, there's more. Because even if you manage to find a place to sleep, Canada is finding new ways to empty your pockets. In most developed nations, competition keeps prices down. But Canada is a land of oligopolies. 3 companies control the grocery market. 3 companies control the telecommunications market. Canadians pay the highest wireless rates in the world, 7 times more than Australians. Why? Because the government allowed mergers like Rogers Shaw to go through, effectively killing competition in the name of national champions. Then, there's the carbon tax. Now, of course, the goal is noble, saving the planet. But the Parliamentary Budget Officer, an independent watchdog, has admitted that despite the rebates, the majority of Canadians are financially worse off because of it. It's an extra layer of friction on an economy that is already seizing up. When you combine the highest housing costs in the G7 with some of the highest grocery and phone bills in the world, you get a talent drain that should terrify every Canadian policymaker. 7% of Canadians are now looking to the US annually. They aren't leaving because they hate Canada. They're leaving because they can't afford to love it anymore. They are moving to Austin, where $2 million gets you a mansion, whereas in Vancouver, that same $2 million gets you a bungalow with a leaky roof and a shared driveway. The population trap, a new economic phenomenon. Economists have a term for what Canada is experiencing right now. It's called a population trap. Usually, this is something we see in developing nations where the population grows so fast that all available capital is spent on basic infrastructure, roads, hospitals, schools, leaving nothing left to invest in productivity. Since 2019, the US has seen its economic productivity grow by 6%. Canada's has declined. Think about that. The average Canadian is getting poorer in real time. The country's GDP might be growing because there are more people, but the GDP per capita, the slice of the pie each person actually gets, is shrinking. We are seeing 25 students living in a single basement in Brampton. We are seeing shared bed rentals in Vancouver for $800 a month. This isn't the Canadian dream. It's a descent into a pre-modern standard of living. However, there is a turning point. Public opinion, which was once the most pro-immigration in the world, has flipped. In 2022, only 27% of Canadians thought immigration was too high. Today, that number is 58%. The government, seeing their approval ratings crater to 33%, has finally blinked. They've promised a housing plan. They've promised to pause population growth. But as the critics say, you cannot be the solution to the problem you created. A warning to the West. Canada is a warning to the rest of the world. It is a case study in what happens when a government prioritizes macro targets over micro realities. When you treat people as units of GDP rather than as citizens who need homes, doctors, and a sense of belonging, the social contract begins to fray. In 2019, 19% of Canadians felt the country was extremely unequal. Today, that has doubled to 38%. The exuberant selfies of 2015 have been replaced by the Take Back Canada marches of 2024. The tragedy of the Canadian story is that it was avoidable. Canada has the land, It has the resources. It had the most respected immigration system on the planet. But it traded all of that for a short-term sugar hit of population growth to mask a stagnant economy. The Canadian dream isn't dead yet, but it is in the and a cure. A radical return to productivity, competition, and housing sanity is going to be a lot more painful than the disease. See you in the next one.